Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We as Pirelli are very proud to be here in connection with the celebrations of the fall of the Berlin Wall and of the example of integration that this means among populations. And because integration is at the end a key word, also when talking about sustainability in companies. So translating it into sustainability as a practical management model in companies where all the functions are integrated one with the other in integrating environmental, social governance and economic issues. I would now go to show you the Pirelli case. First of all, some very short indications about Pirelli profile. So who is Pirelli? Pirelli was founded in 1872 and is listed in the Milan Stock Exchange since 1922. We are positioned as leaders in the premium tire segment and among the most profitable companies in the sector. Here you see the EBIT margins in 2013, and currently just the last guidance that was given to the market 2 days ago is maintaining, differently from example from other peers and independently from the difficult situation we are living in Europe and also in Brazil, we maintain the guidance of the profits that we announced to the market last year in our multi-year plan. We have a strong brand, so Pirelli can count on a strong brand, also thanks to our positioning as Formula One suppliers and historical position in the various motorsports. As you can see, in the sales by region, our presence is all over the world. We are present in more than 160 countries, producing with the 25 plants in all the areas that you see here in the sales by region. And now we start talking about governance and thus about sustainability implemented in our company. As you can see, there has been a major change since 2009 to today. Because in 2009, we could not be considered as a real public company because we had a shareholder pact, and also the amount of free float on the market was very limited. And at the same time, the institutional investors were 16% on our free float. Currently, in very few years, we became a fully public company with a free float that is around 74%, with institutional investors that have been targeted by us that amount currently to 43%, currently 44% of our investors. And of course, these investors include socially responsible investors. For at least 20% of these consider our sustainable performance before investing in us. And we wanted this kind of investors because they can grant stability to our shares on the market and thus to the market. And also because they are long-term investors. And this is substantial for a company that puts sustainability at the core of its strategies. As you can see also in the governance issues on the slide, on the bottom of the slide, the lead independent director is present since 2005. We have diminished, it is not written here, but we have diminished the number of the executive directors inside our board and also of the non-executive directors. The board was 20 people composed in 2009 and currently is 15, with the 20% women present. Executives' remuneration is also aligned with, of course, the strategic plan and the sustainability targets that we are going to see that the company has set. Here, I would skip. Here are the major achievements that have been reported in terms of sustainability in our last report. But of course, they only consider the 2013 end year, even though these are the results of strategies that have been implemented in the previous years, so that these were the result in the 2013. Of course, the presentation is at disposal of all of you, so even though I skip, you can, of course, see it later and ask me also through email. A company overview, always within the company overview, ESG sector leadership widely recognized by third parties. When talking about third parties, in this case, we are talking about the major sustainable finance indexes, with 8 consecutive years global leadership in the Dow Jones Sustainability Indexes, a 100 on 100 FTSE Global and European stock score. And carbon disclosure leadership, we have just won, let me say, the award of Carbon Disclosure Leadership Index in Italy last week. Also, with reference to Global Compact 100, Pirelli is the only tire company that for the second consecutive year is present in this index. And as far as Oecom research is concerned, Pirelli has been recognized the global leader in the tire industry, as a supplier of the tire industry, because of course Pirelli positions in the auto and parts segment, which is a subsector within the automotive sector. And now let's come to what has just been highlighted by Volkswagen. So today I think that the focus is automotive because Volkswagen before and then a supplier of Volkswagen, that is Pirelli. And in this case, you see effectively what has just been mentioned, where the world is going. So everything is changing, and is changing in not so many years as far as our expectations are concerned, because we have downside risks that dominate the world economic outlook in terms of macroeconomic uncertainty. At the same time, companies that look to the long term have to deal with regulatory constraints, but constraints that can also be opportunities. We will see it later in our targets. But of course, there is a strong move towards low carbon economies in terms of regulations. And then changes in social behaviors. What do our next generations or current generations in the future think about the mobility? So we have to deal, to cope with their expectations, with their willingness to drive in cities, but at the same time using, for example, cars as a service in the big cities, and in a situation where they have to be healthy, and so in a low carbon mobility context. And these demographic changes let us expect that the majority of people will go to the cities, and so urban sustainable mobility will be a substantial issue for automotive industry and auto and parts industry to be considered in order to prepare the correct strategic and business development plans lasting in the long term. Low carbon emissions, what was also showed before, you see that it is not only Europe that is working on this, it is, we can say, all the world that is working on this. And this is something in terms of regulations or external government's expectations that companies have to cope with. And of course, all these aspects translate into opportunities for sustainable companies. Again, you can see the tire labeling. Now from the automotive large perspective, we come to the worldwide spreading of the tire labeling. Tire labeling, you know, is something that shows the energy efficiency of a tire and the other features, in particular wet grip and the noise. Everything that has to cope with the environmental aspects, but at the same time impacting economic aspects, because energy efficiency of a tire also means less consumption of fuel, and at the same time a substantial saving for the consumer. And as you can see, it is not only, again, Europe that copes with this, because you see that there are many countries, also developing countries, that are working on these labelings, and that make a tough competition in terms of low carbon impacts for the automotive and auto and parts industry. Now we come to our sustainability plan and the Pirelli value driver model. The value driver model that we adopted comes from the United Nations Global Compact lead work with the United Nations Principle for Responsible Investments work. And this is a way in order to engage with investors. It is a way to talk in order to engage with investors, because we try to translate our sustainability strategic plan, that is at the same time the industrial plan of the company with the sustainable features. We try to translate it in a language that investors and the financial market can understand. So we talk, when talking about sustainability targets, we have to have a return on capital that at the same time is split into aspects of growth, of productivity, and of governance and risk management, with a long-term strategy in terms of growth that impacts on growth and product innovation, and in terms of productivity with operational efficiency targets and human capital management, of course, which is an intangible that always becomes into tangible aspects, and governance and risk management with enterprise risk management and supply chain risks. All these, in terms of return on capital, at the end brings to revenue growth, cost saving, and let's always remember the importance of cost avoidance, and revenue reputation risk reduction with a sustainability risk containment. And here you can see, even though this is a difficult slide to be seen, here we try to show the full integration of our sustainability plan within the industrial plan, which is an integration that supports and protects the group targets and values in order to maintain the capability of the company to reach its profit in the long term, as it has been declared to the investors. And the industrial plan puts its attention on the OE pull-through, product renewal, premium go-to-market and retail coverage and consumer engagement in the top-line growth. And so on the left, you see the basics of the industrial plan, and on the right, you see the basics of the sustainability targets, supporting the capability of the company to reach the targets on the left. And you see also the translation into money when we are able to do it in order to have a clearer communication with the investors. As you can, all these targets that you see on the right, we will go through in a minute. First of all, let's always remember that in terms of a sustainable strategy, the characteristics of the life cycle of our products have to be clear in each company. When talking about environmental impacts, if you look at the life cycle assessment of our tire, this is a typical tire, a Cinturato P7 of Pirelli. If you see the global warming potential of our tire, you see that the 90%, around 90% of the impact that our tires have in terms of CO2 is in the use phase. And that's why the original equipment clients, such as, for example, Volkswagen, ask us to constantly reduce the impacts in terms of CO2 impacts. And also because around the 50% of the average CO2 emissions of a car come from the tire. So you see also the importance of the collaboration with original equipment innovation, of our research and development, working on new raw materials, on everything that is innovation, in order to reach a target of constant reduction of rolling resistance, but always maintaining the performance of the tire. And indeed, we have in our plans new materials with an impact on low rolling resistance that come from our research and innovation. So new technologies also, like the Pirelli Cyber Tire, that have an impact because they control automatically the pressure of a tire, and the pressure is substantial in order to maintain a correct rolling resistance at the same time, to maintain the safety of the driver. And so materials and new technologies. And you see here the targets that have been communicated to the market in terms of diminishment of rolling resistance with the capability within 20 and 20 to reduce of 40% the rolling resistance compared to the base of 2007. So you can see this is the average of our product. So we're not focusing only on those that are produced, for example, in Europe where we have leveling. We try to challenge ourselves calculating these indexes and targets considering all the production base all over the world. This means exporting, of course, our technologies and capabilities and regulations and policies all over the world, even though we're not, of course, in Europe. And these are the targets on the product: rolling resistance, wet grip and noise, which must be granted at the same time in all our businesses, so car, truck and motorcycles. And of course, this has to be translated into revenues, because without profits, there's no sustainability. And one is necessary to the other. So Pirelli Green Performance revenues are those revenues that we calculate come from those products that respect the first three letters of the label, of the European label. But consider that, again, this is calculated on the average of our tires in the world. Otherwise, it would be much higher if we consider, for example, only Europe. But in considering the fact that we are engaged in implementing these aspects, industrializing all over the world with the same features, also, sorry, I do not. Also because we are positioned as premium and prestige suppliers, well, we are going to reach 48% in 2017 of green performance revenues on all tire revenues. In terms of energy consumption and CO2 emissions, these are the specific targets. So minus 15% within 20 and 20 compared to 2009 base, and minus 18% energy specific consumption. Here we are no more in the product, but in the processes. So industrial processes. And also, of course, this has to be translated into money, because this means making investments, but at the same time expecting returns in terms of savings. Savings in terms of money, but also on CO2 emissions. And productivity, always, in terms of impact on productivity, water withdrawal is going to be diminished very much. As you can see here, this is a strategic look to the future, because if a CO2 currently and in the future is an issue, let's always remind that water is the gold of the future. And the company has to be prepared also economically to prevent a crisis management that should be put in place in case the water increases in prices, such as, for example, in Brazil. Currently, there is a very, very dramatic situation for water, so there might be the possibility that the water cost also increases. And companies have to be prepared, first of all, bringing to the real physiological and efficient need the use of water withdrawal. And this, of course, again, means savings, money in the future, and be prepared in a sustainable way. And waste recovery is another, let me say, business. At a certain extent, companies can reuse their waste, but at the same time have to dramatically cut the production of waste. And this means, again, efficiency and productivity in our factories. And this also means expecting substantial savings. Here you see what we expected, the 60 million savings in the period 2013-17 that was communicated to the market last year. Well, we have already reached that amount of savings in 1 year, so we will restate the target. And of course, the concept shall bring to zero waste to landfill. But without capital, human capital governance, there's no sustainable company. And here are the main pillars of our approach. So merit and ethics, training and education, occupational health and safety, diversity, dialogue, and roles. These aspects represent the DNA of our employment governance. And here I would focus on something that is again translated in numbers, for example, training and education. Well, here you see that we had a target to be reached in 2015, which was 7 man days on average for each employee in the world of training per year. And this was reached again before the timing that we expected. And so in 2013, and our current target is the one of maintaining the highest level of training in our sector, meaning auto and parts. And for occupational health and safety, I would like here to focus on our, again, substantial target of reduction by 90% the frequency index of the accidents of our employees within 20 and 20. Consider that currently is not so high, but the matter is going towards 0 accidents, which is a choice, it's not a chance. And that's something that we are fully aware we cannot reach just imposing rules. Indeed, in collaboration with DuPont, that is specialized on these aspects, we have invested much money in making a worldwide project that focuses on culture, the culture of safety, because without the culture of safety, it's not possible to reach these targets. And of course, enterprise risk management with a risk minimization approach on both strategic and operational transversal risks. Supply chain risk is another issue that is fundamental, and we integrate sustainability from the selection process to the audit phase, not only the contractual, of course, with 200 audits covering 100% of the suppliers that we consider at risk in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pessina. Are there questions or remarks? Yes, please, in the first row. Could someone, or maybe you tried without a microphone?
Yes, I think so.
Thank you. You should switch it on.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I think there is a concern and an issue with the disposals of tires. And, you know, after the using of the tires, I've seen reports on number of channels on huge graves of tires that they don't know what to do with them, and they are harming the environment. What Pirelli is doing to help in that? Are you creating some reusable material, recycling, environment-friendly tires? What's
okay, clear. Thank you. So not only Pirelli, but in this case, Pirelli with its competitors, because it is necessary, yes, it is necessary to lobby together in order to reach results on this field. For example, is working on the tire industry project group with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development in order to involve those governments in the world that are still not ready to recover tires, in order to involve them, creating a sort of consortium we call, where all the tire makers ask their dealers to put they use the tires when the clients go to the dealer and leave the tire for the change with the new one. This has already been done in Europe, all over the Europe, with the European Tire and Rubber Manufacturers Association, again by Pirelli and its peers, and is also done in other countries. But this means, for example, in Europe, that more than 90% of tires are currently recycled. The scheme that the tire producers are proposing also to the other countries is the same one that has given the results in Europe and in other countries. It is the fact that, for example, I have to buy a new tire. I go to the dealer because, for example, in our case, the tire producers are B2B, not B2C. So we work with the dealers. I am the client. I go to the dealer. I ask a new tire. At the same time, I leave there my tires. The dealer has the responsibility to bring these to a consortium that is the one created by the tire makers in order for these used tires to be either destroyed, for example, creating energy, or recycled in many, many ways. So this is the characteristic of what is called tire and ELT, end-of-life tire management in countries like Europe. In the other countries, there are situations of free market where many do this work, but there is still not a consortium. And countries where there is nothing, that are the ones that, with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, we are working with.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Pessina, a warm applause for you.